Hey church, today I want to tell you about a missionary that you may not know very much about, but who had an incredible legacy. Her name was Esther Ahn Kim. Esther Ahn Kim was born in Korea in the year 1908. 2 years later, the Japanese had invaded Korea and made it a territory of Japan. And during that time, it was really harsh to be a Korean living in Korea under Japanese rule. They were very cruel oppressors and forced Koreans into all kinds of economic and physical hardships, including her family. And yet, she had a believing Christian mother who showed her and lived out the good news of Jesus and the peace of Jesus in the middle of all of the hardship that they went through. She soon became a teacher of music at a Christian school until the Japanese authorities came in and told them that they were not allowed to teach the good news of Jesus. That in fact, they had to start teaching the kids to believe the Japanese Shinto religion and forced people to bow down to the sun goddess. Well, Esther refused to do so and was arrested. But she somehow escaped and then made her way to a bigger city in Korea where she met with other persecuted Christians. From there, these other Christians gathered together and they wanted to pray for their oppressive rulers, the Japanese people. And so Esther, along with a few other friends, actually took a boat ride across the sea to Japan, where they went around and they preached the forgiveness of sins in Jesus, and they asked that the Japanese government would repent. Well, you could probably imagine how this went. It didn't go down very well, and Esther was arrested, sent back to Korea to serve a prison sentence under the harsh Japanese prison system. She was there in this Japanese jail for 6 years. In this jail, they had just terrible conditions. They hardly fed people, they beat people, they abused people, and they didn't provide them with clean clothing or adequate sleeping arrangements or anything like that. And yet, Esther knew that she was likely going to get arrested, and so she memorized 100 different chapters of the Bible, so that when she would go into prison, she could recall these verses to mind at any time she wanted, and that she could share them with her fellow prisoners. And that's exactly what she did. Over the next 6 years, Esther continued to love and show the love of Jesus to her fellow prisoners, and many of them put their faith in Jesus. In fact, some of their Japanese jailers also came to profess faith in Jesus. In 1945, at the end of the Second World War, Japan had been defeated and the prisoners had been set free. It was then that Esther decided that she wanted to move to America to attend seminary so she can continue her training of understanding the Bible and sharing it with others. It was there she got married and met her husband, and along with her husband, she moved to Los Angeles, where there had been a growing number of refugees who had fled from Korea, who had started to try a new life in America. They planted a church there in what is now called Koreatown, and this church had a massive influence on not only the surrounding culture and the refugees from Korea, but about the landscape in America as well. Because of this ministry, thousands, hundreds of thousands of Koreans gave their life to Jesus. And then those people invited their neighbors, white people, black people, Hispanic people, people from all over the world began attending this church and giving their lives to Jesus as well. Esther Ahn Kim is someone who has this incredible legacy that despite the hardship that she experienced, she was able to share the gospel with thousands and thousands of people. And now there is a massive amount of immigrants in America who have come to faith and have then gone on to be missionaries themselves in other parts of the world because of Esther Ahn Kim's legacy. She wrote a book a few decades ago called "If I Perish, I Perish." These words come out of the mouth of Queen Esther. If you have ever read the Old Testament book of Esther, you'll know the story. Esther's people are in trouble, and an edict has been written that all the Jewish people are going to be wiped out. And Esther knows that she's in a precarious position. She could sort of save herself, go under the radar, and not be noticed, or she could go to the king at the risk of her life and plead on the behalf of her people. And ultimately, Esther decides that it's her duty to step in, to be God's representative, and to change the mind of the powerful king. And at this thought, she says, I'm going to go. I'm going to fulfill my God-given responsibility. And if I perish, I perish. But I know that this is what God has called me to do. Esther Ahn Kim's legacy is exactly that. That no matter what circumstance she went through, she gave her everything because she knew that Jesus was more worth it than her own life. And because of her, there are hundreds of thousands of Christ followers around the U.S., around Korea and Japan, and now around the world who are continuing to share the legacy that she started. It's an amazing story of what one person can do who has courage in Jesus, who knows that their peace and their life is solely found in him. So, I guess the application for myself and for us is that we may never be put in a crazy prison cell and have the same opportunities to share Jesus in those darkest places of life, but that does not exclude us from being able to have the same love and passion for Jesus that Esther Ahn Kim did, and to go out into the world that we find ourselves occupying and say, you know what, I belong to him and he is more important than anything else. And so, if I get rejected, I get rejected. If I perish, I perish. If people make fun of me, people make fun of me, but this is what I stand on, the love of Jesus. So let's imitate Esther Ahn Kim today, this week, our whole lifetime, that no matter where we find ourselves, we cannot help but demonstrate the love and grace of Jesus wherever we are. See you later.